Hello and welcome to a Uniguest digital engagement training video, and in this video we're going to be looking at templates. So what is a template? A template in essence is your presentation. So because we're creating a template to put all of our content into, which will give us our presentation. So we're going to move over to the word content, click on the word content, and this will give us our drop down menu. In previous videos, we looked at all the different types of content we can add ready in the system. So I'm now going to click onto template page. And as we can see, the black square in the middle is representing the TV screen it's going to go onto. So if I come up to the very top here where it says example 1, it will open it up so I can create a new template, or I can add a folder structure, exactly the same as we've done within playlists and media. So to start with, I'm going to click on add folder, and I'm just going to call this one quarter 1. All right, click OK, and I've now got a new folder. So if I click into that folder now, all of my new templates I'm about to create will fall automatically into this folder. Of course, we can move them between folders later on, as we did within media and playlists. So let's start by clicking on new template, and we're going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this one January. I can, if I want to, copy it from another presentation. So this can save me a lot of work. If the content is going to be very similar, or the layout is going to be very similar, I can copy it across and then just edit the widgets or content within it. But for today's training, I'm going to leave it as none, as we're going to make a brand new one. So I'm going to click OK. So now we have gone into our new template. Next to where we can find our folder structure or create a new template, we've got our save button. I'm going to come back to these icons along the top here in a moment, but on the right hand side here we've got our template base, and the two most important ones to start with is first of all your background and also your template size. So if I click onto template size, I can now decide what is the type of screen I'm using, i.e. what is the size. Is it going to be a 1920 by 1080, and is it going to be in landscape or portrait? And I can choose it here. And as you can see, we've got a wide variety of different screen proportions and sizes for you. So I'm going to do mine in HD landscape. So I'm going to click on HD landscape, and it's just confirming the width and height for me. I'm now going to click apply. Now, next to the sizing, we've got our background, and we uploaded a background previously, and I'm now going to use that background because it will show me where I can put my content. So I'm going to click onto my template background. I can, if I want to, have a solid color, and I can simply just click on the color chart here, and I can then point using the picker of what color I would like as my background, or I can type in my RGB, and I can then click OK and then click apply, and I would have a solid background. If however you want to use an image as a background like I'm going to do, we can either upload a new one now, or if we previously uploaded it under media, we can now select the image. So I'm going to click on select, and I put it into my training folder, and there we go, Train AV 3-zone background. So I'm going to click on that one. It's now changed color, and I'm going to click select. We do have the option down here about the size. Do we want it to stretch? Do we want it to keep its same cover, same size, or do we want it to cover the whole area but keep its proportion? So I'm going to use stretch, although this is a 1920 by 1080 image, so it will fit the screen perfectly. I'm now going to click apply. So already we have now got our background in place, and I can see very clearly where I want to have content. The next thing we can do is decide whether we want to use a grid system. And if I now click this grid, I can choose between a white and a black one. I'm just going to click white. And you're going to see this working in just a moment when I add a new widget. So a widget is your content. All right, so if I click on add a new widget, we can now scroll down and see the different types of content we can bring in. So if I wanted to add a text box, for example, all I need to do is click on text box and then click create. Now we can see my grid because we've got these lines which are giving me the dimensions of and the location of where my box is going. So all I'm doing is using my left mouse button pressed down to move the box around and to make it bigger or smaller. We can, if we wanted to, come across to the right hand side. Because this box is highlighted, I can come in and amend the width of my box, the height of my box, or the X and Y axis. And this is referring in pixels. The X axis is at the top, and it always starts in the top left hand corner as 0. So there's 1920 pixels across, and my Y axis is coming down, and again it starts at the top left hand corner and there's 1080 down. So if you have created a background and want to get very precise, you can, once you've added your box, you can type in the size and it will then move it to the correct location for you. So as I'm already doing it manually, I'm just going to finish it off. There we go. So I've now got my text box. There's a couple of ways we can edit the box a little bit more. So I have these icons here, so I can edit my text. I can then hover over and choose my alignment. I can either have center alignment or central alignment. I can then bring backwards, forward and delete, and these are matched over here as well. So I've got my edit, delete, backwards, forward, and then of course duplicate the element. So if I'm going to have multiple text boxes up, I could just duplicate it. I'm now going to just simply click on my edit button, and here's my text box. So I'm just going to delete that word out, and I do have a little bit of text ready to go. So I've just copied and pasted that directly in. I can now use the top menu exactly as you would find in most word publishing. You can make it bold, you can change the different types of font, you can change the size and the alignment within this area. Now this might take a little back and forth to make it fit into such a small box. I can, if I come down the bottom here, at the moment the content is static, so it's not going to move. If I do want it to move, I can tell it I want it to scroll from right to left. I can, if I want to, click on background and give it a solid background color. So I could change the yellow, the green if I wanted to, and then I can simply click apply, and as you can see it's a different shade there, and my text is a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is just remove a little bit of my text. So I delete that out, there we go. And if I now click apply, it now fits in there, and if I wanted to, I could enlarge my text slightly more, or I can just continue to move it around my text box to make it absolutely perfect. So once you're happy with that, we can move on to another element. But because I've added a widget now, if I come back up to the top here, these icons come into play. So the one that says widget, if I click onto it, we can see because I've added a text box, it's now applying here. So again, I can click on edit to edit the box. I can also lock it so it can't be moved. And I can also hide it as well if I wanted to. And as we add widgets, this is going to populate around, so it makes it for very easy management later on. If I've made a mistake, I can undo or redo. And if I click on the history button, it will tell me everything that I'm doing whilst building this page up. So if I now come down, we've got our text box in there, and if I now click on to add widget, if I wanted to, I can add a document into it. And if you remember, when we looked at the content page under documents, we actually added a document. So if I wanted to, I can simply click on document, click create, and again, I've got my box, and I'm just going to place it just in the middle because we are going to keep changing. Again, exactly the same options as we had with our text box, but when I go to my edit element, I can now click select document, and I can now go to either my folder or the document that's just in the main folder. And I'm going to click on my training one, click select, and it will then drop in to here for me. I can click apply, and there is the document we previously added. And if I just go back up to my widget again, you'll see we've got the two boxes attached, and it's telling me the type of the boxes. Now, as we build this, our first one, the text box, will go down the screen because it was the first thing we added, so it's going to go at the bottom of the pile. I'm going to keep adding on top of it. So I'm going to delete this one out because I don't actually want to have a document within my main area here. If I want it to be an image, I can simply click on image, click create, and then I can position my box where I would like it, and I can then simply click on edit, and now I can decide which image I want to use. So I'm going to go to select image, and again we've got our folder structure that we created earlier, which is indicated by the little tiny folder icon. So I'm going to click on training, and if I wanted to, I can choose number 1, click select, and there we go. I can change how it looks again exactly as we did with our background, and I can now click apply, and if I wanted to, I could maneuver this into place to make it exactly the correct size. So this is all we're doing, it's just adding our boxes and choosing which content we would like to actually have. So if I now move over to a video, it would work in exactly the same process. So if I click on create, so there's my box for a video, and I did upload a video earlier, so I can now click select video. I put it into my training, and there it is. I can now click select. Now, at the moment, this video would just play and then end. But if I click loop video, and if this is the only bit of content here, because it's not in a playlist, remember, it's just separate, it would continuously loop around. So it would never just end, it would just be constantly applying for me. If I now click on add new widget, and this time I'm going to bring in a playlist. And our playlist, if you remember when we looked at the playlist within the content, is a series of images, video and PDFs. So I would normally have this as my main content because it makes it more interactive. By having just one video there rotating around can be great, especially if you've got a fast moving environment. But if there's an area where potentially people are going to be sat, you may want to change the content rotating around so we can get more messages across to people. So as I've got my playlist chosen, I'm going to click on the edit button, and I can now click select playlist. If I go to so I've got a couple of my example ones. If you remember, these were my PDF playlists, or I can go to my playlist folder, training video playlist folder, and I'm actually going to choose example 1 because I forgot to put it into the folder structure. So I'm going to go with example 1, click select, and we can now see all of the content within that. Now, as I edit my playlist, it's going to automatically update my presentation. So if later on I remove maybe image 1 and replace it with something different, when I save it within my playlist, it's going to update it within my presentation as well. So I can click apply now, and there is my playlist, and it will rotate around with the settings I've given it. We can also, if we wanted to, add a clock. So if I now click onto clock, click create, I can now choose where I would like my clock to be. And as you see, as I'm resizing it, the clock is automatically resizing for me. If I now click onto edit, I can choose more information about the clock. Would I like it to be an analog clock, or would I like it to be digital with the date? I can then choose what color I would like it. So I'm going to go for a bright red one. There we go. I'm then going to change the font. So I'm going to put it to my company font, which is Gotham. I can change the alignment, and I can change how it looks as well. So the easiest thing to do with this one is just come down, and there's examples next to all of the names. So I'm just going to go with the 12-hour short, and I can then change the font size if I wanted to. So I don't want it to be too big, so I'm going to drop it down to about 42. I can now click apply, and there is my clock. So I do, because I'd made it nice and small for my analog, I need to just readjust it, and I can do the alignment now with my clock. And this is all we need to do, is keep building up the content. If I now click on add widget, if I wanted to, I could bring in something like a QR code. So if I click on QR code, click create, there is my QR code. So it's generated a QR code, but it's not actually generated where the information is coming from. So again, I'm going to edit that, and it says text here, but what I can do if I wanted to is put in my company URL, and you'll see as I was typing, the QR change is changing the whole time. I can now change the fore color and the background, and I can simply click apply, and then if you grab your mobile phone, open your camera and point it at the QR code, you'll see it will direct you to a website. Just going to remove that one because I don't actually want it up there for this presentation. Now, if I wanted to, I can bring in a RSS feed. So again, exactly the same principle. So I can click on web feed, click create, and there is my RSS box, and I'm just going to rearrange the size slightly. There we go. I need to make that a little bit smaller just to get the alignment right. So there we go, and I'm just going to position that there. Now, when I click on the edit, because don't forget we can click on the edit here, but where it's quite small, I'm actually going to click on the edit button here. So we can see the RSS feed, and of course we can remove that and copy and paste in a new URL if we wanted to. We can now look at the scrolling. Do we want it to scroll? If we do, what direction do we want it? Right to left, left to right, vertical? Remember, if you are speaking in English or European language, it needs to be right to left, because otherwise it's going to come out backwards. We can include the body. What the body is as we've seen here, Colorado Supreme Court kicks Trump off ballot. If the body will be the information to do with the headline. So if I untick that, it will remove the additional information about that headline. So we have the choice how much information comes in. We can now change our font if we want to. We can change the font color. Again, we can use RGBA, or we can manually pick the color we would like. We can then change the size of the heading, and if we are using the content or the body, I can amend the size as well. So you can have it the same size if you wanted to, or you can have the headline a little bit bigger. We can choose to have a border, and we can then manipulate the border to give us the right approach. So I'm quite happy with all of that, so I'm just going to click apply, and there is my RSS down the bottom here. And you may just need to maneuver it just to get the correct size. There we go. Okay, so what we can now do is add things like weather if we wanted to. So if I click onto weather, click create, here is my weather widget. And again, we can edit this by the edit button. So I can decide how many days of weather I would like to be shown. Offset means, so from 2 days, so 2 days is meaning today and tomorrow, but I can offset that, i.e. look at later on in the week. So move it by 2 days. So it's now looking at Friday to Saturday. Whereas if I have the offset at 0, it's looking at today and tomorrow. We can change the font color. Let's change the font color actually, and then we can see it nice and clearly. There we go. We can then change the label size. So can you see the 8.6 Celsius is increasing? I can change the date size as well. And I can change the icon size. So i.e. the picture is getting smaller now. And then I can choose spacing between the wording and the icons if I wanted to. We can then choose to add in things like the date and how it would look. And if you don't want to have the weather in Celsius, we can choose Fahrenheit. Now, it's defaulted to Paris for me, but if I want it to be, for example, the UK, I can simply just come out on my map and then click where I would like it on the map. So if I wanted central London, there we go. This is currently the weather in central London. I can now click apply, and I have my weather widget. So again, I'm just going to delete that off because it's getting rather busy. If I come back to edit widget, we can bring in additional items as well. So if I wanted to bring a YouTube video in, I can simply click YouTube, click create, and here's my box. All right, so at the moment, as you can see, it's got an error message. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to now go to edit. And then what I can do is simply grab the YouTube URL to add into it. So I've got the URL for the YouTube video I'd like to play. So I'm going to paste that in there. And I now have the option to loop it if I wanted to do so. And I can click apply. And you'll see that it's now started to play the YouTube video for me. So I'm just going to delete that off. And this is all we do. We just keep going through and adding different things. So within the hotels, we can bring in things like room boards. We can bring in display events with directions, which we're going to look at separately. We can bring in our API template, and we looked at the video of creating these. We can bring in a web page as well, and that is simply a case again of adding it and then editing, and we would just add in our URL and test the inclusion to make sure that we can bring it in, and then click apply. So this is all we do to build up our template and our content. We can bring in things like external input as well. So this is where we can have something going into your server. So we can then bring in via source selection as well, which is very, very popular. So let me just delete that one. So I've actually got most of the content I would like to add. We can of course bring in things for sliders, containers and a language selector as well, so they can change between different languages if we wanted to. So on the whole, my presentation is actually complete now. So because I'm now ready to save it, I'm going to come up and click the save button, and that template is created. So we can now move over ready to schedule it.